Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm so glad you are here with us because today we have a very specific mission.
We really do.
Yeah, we are taking a sledgehammer to one of the most widely accepted cultural rules about success.
Right. The one everyone just accepts as fact.
Exactly. We're going to explore why the common interpretation of this rule isn't just slightly off the mark, but is actively setting us, and especially our kids, up for total failure.
Total failure. It's wild when you actually look at the data.
It is. It's one of those concepts that has become so embedded in our collective psyche that we barely even register it as a theory anymore. We just treat it as absolute law.
Like gravity.
Yeah, like gravity.
Yeah.
But today, we are questioning that law. Our deep dive is based on some incredibly revealing excerpts from the ACTIQO podcast, specifically a breakdown titled The 10,000-Hour Rule, Rethinking Practice and Purpose.
And, we all know Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000-hour rule from his book Outliers. It has been the holy grail of modern parenting and professional development for over a decade and a half now.
The absolute holy grail.
Right. And the premise that sheer volume of practice equals guaranteed mastery is seductive because it democratizes genius.
It makes it accessible.
Exactly. It tells you that greatness isn't locked away in some genetic vault. It's simply a math equation. Put in the 10,000 hours, extract the world-class result.
Just do the math and you win.
Right. But the source material we're looking at completely tears the foundation out from under that premise.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the way this simplified idea mutated into an intense instruction manual for raising a champion is, well, that's where the real damage was done.
Oh, absolutely. The mutation is the problem.
Yeah, the logic chain for parents became terrifyingly clear. If you need 10,000 hours to guarantee your child's success, you have to start the clock when they are a toddler.
Just to beat the competition to the finish line.
Right. And the result is a culture of intense hyper-specialization.
Which is so detrimental. Now, the sources are careful to establish that time spent developing a skill obviously matters. Nobody is suggesting you can step onto a tennis court for the first time at age 20 and win Wimbledon through sheer willpower.
Oh, of course not. That would be absurd.
Right. But the critical failure of the pop culture version of the 10,000-hour rule is the assumption that hours are the only input that matters.
Just logging the hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The research behind deliberate practice is infinitely more complex than a stopwatch.
And deliberate practice is a term that gets thrown around a lot, right? But the sources define it very technically.
Very technically.
It isn't just mindless repetition. It isn't just, logging hours on a chord or mindlessly playing scales at a piano.
No, true deliberate practice requires intense focus, continuous feedback loops, and constantly pushing oneself just beyond the current edge of capability.
It's exhausting. It is uncomfortable work.
Yeah.
And when you strip away that technical definition and just leave the number 10,000, you completely lose the actual recipe for how mastery develops.
You lose the entire point. And the sources lay out a massive list of missing variables that the simplified rule just completely ignores.
Let's talk about those variables.
Well, context is one of the most glaring omissions. The 10,000-hour framework assumes all learning environments are identical.
Which they aren't.
Not at all. Practicing chess, for example, which has fixed rules and immediate, clear outcomes, is fundamentally different from practicing jazz. Or navigating a complex business negotiation.
Where the rules constantly shift.
Right, where the rules shift and the feedback is totally ambiguous. The hours just don't translate equally across different domains.
And coaching and environment play equally massive roles, don't they?
Huge roles.
I mean, you can drill a tennis forehand for thousands of hours, but if the coaching isn't providing the right micro-corrections, you are just cementing bad habits.
You're getting perfectly good at doing it wrong.
Exactly. And if the environment is fear-based, say the child is terrified of making a mistake because a parent or a coach is screaming from the sidelines, the cognitive load of that anxiety actually blocks the brain's ability to absorb the lesson.
The brain just shuts down.
Yeah, the hours are essentially wasted.
They are. And timing and developmental readiness are also critical variables here. Pushing a 7-year-old to perform complex tactical maneuvers before their brain has developed the necessary spatial reasoning.
It's an exercise in futility.
Completely. It just causes massive frustration for both the adult and the child. But, the absolute heaviest weight among all these missing variables is motivation.
Motivation. But let's be realistic here and play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
The sources advocate heavily against early specialization. But if you look at elite gymnastics or figure skating, The reality is that if you aren't specialized in grinding out hours by age 6, you physically age out of elite contention.
You do. That's a biological reality for those sports.
Right. So how does the source material reconcile those very visible exceptions?
Well, the researchers actually address that head on. Sports like gymnastics and figure skating are categorized specifically as early specialization domains.
Ah.
They are the exceptions, and unfortunately, they are the highly televised exceptions that parents use as the model for everything else.
During the Olympics, everyone sees the 15-year-old gold medalist and thinks, I need to start my kid at 3.
Exactly. But the vast majority of sports, arts, and professional fields are late specialization domains. What's fascinating here is what researchers studying skill development actually find when they look at the broader spectrum of elite performers. It is completely counterintuitive to the early grind mindset.
How so?
They found that deliberate practice only becomes truly powerful after someone has discovered an activity they are genuinely motivated to pursue.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The sources share specific data on the developmental path of highly successful performers. Instead of hyper-focusing on one single thing at age 4 to rack up those 10,000 hours, the vast majority of elite athletes and world-class creatives spent years in what researchers call a sampling period.
A sampling period, I love that term.
Right. They explored an incredibly wide variety of different activities.
They played unstructured games, they tried multiple sports, they picked up instruments and then dropped them.
And this exploration phase is frequently mischaracterized by anxious parents as lost time.
Oh, constantly.
Like if a kid plays basketball for a year and then wants to try swimming, the parent panics because the basketball hours are now wasted.
But they aren't wasted. This sampling period is exactly how these individuals develop a robust, diverse physical and cognitive toolkit.
The cross-pollination of skills is wild when you look at the examples provided in the source material.
It really is.
A kid who takes martial arts learns balance and footwork that later translates perfectly into competitive dance or fencing.
Yes. Or a child who studies music develops pattern recognition that accelerates their understanding of mathematics or coding later on.
They are sampling the buffet of life, figuring out how their bodies move and how their brains process entirely different types of challenges.
And you know, the psychological benefit of that buffet is even more important than the physical skill transfer.
The psychology of it.
Right, yeah. This extended exploration allows the individual to find out what actually resonates with them on a deep personal level. It leads them to the tipping point of curiosity.
A tipping point of curiosity.
Exactly. Eventually, through all this low-pressure sampling, they discover the specific pursuit that genuinely captures their attention.
Let's look at the anecdote the source material shared about the junior tennis prodigy to really cement this.
Oh, that story is heartbreaking.
It really is. So we have a kid who was pushed into early specialization, right? Hitting 500 balls a day at age 6.
500 a day.
By age 10, this kid is a national champion, dominating the circuit. To the outside world, the 10,000-hour rule is working flawlessly.
The perfect success story.
But by age 12, this same child completely quit the sport, refused to even look at a racket, and suffered severe burnout.
Yeah, that phenomenon is called the early peak burnout.
Early peak burnout.
Right. The mechanical skills were there, forged through thousands of hours of forced repetition, but the structural integrity of the child's psyche was completely hollow.
Because the motivation was entirely external.
Exactly. The child was being dragged to the practice facility, told what drills to run, and operating purely to satisfy a parent's desire or a coach's demands.
They were just going through the motions to avoid disappointing the adults in their life.
That's all it was. But when the motivation is internal, everything flips.
When the child finds the thing that grabs them, the practice suddenly becomes meaningful. They work hard because they actively want to improve.
The activity itself is the reward.
Yes, they are the ones setting the alarm early to practice or watching technique videos in their free time. Practice works best when it follows curiosity rather than preceding it.
And think about the immense psychological difference between a child operating on external pressure versus internal drive.
It's night and day.
It really is. The child with internal drive is actively seeking out the friction of deliberate practice. They welcome the discomfort of learning a new, difficult skill because they are invested in the outcome.
Whereas the child operating on external pressure is constantly trying to minimize friction.
Right. They want the practice to end as quickly as possible.
We see this playing out every day in the modern parental arms race. You have families driving minivans across 3 counties on a Tuesday night in rush hour traffic just for a 30-minute cello lesson.
Or an elite travel soccer practice.
Exactly. Entirely because another parent in the neighborhood said their kid is doing it. It is an exhausting performance of optimization.
It stems from a profound cultural fear. A fear that if a child isn't constantly busy, constantly accumulating measurable data points of achievement, they are falling irreparably behind.
We have turned childhood into a high-stakes corporate environment.
We really have.
So what does this all mean? If we are talking directly to you, the listener, especially if you are navigating the chaotic world of parenting or mentoring young people, this research demands a complete paradigm shift.
A total shift in how we view development.
We have to stop treating childhood like a spreadsheet that needs to be maximized with optimized data points. The goal shouldn't be to max out a timer to hit 10,000 hours.
No, because the rush to specialize is entirely based on a misunderstanding of how human beings actually learn and thrive.
Right.
The actual goal of childhood activities is far simpler, yet much harder for anxious adults to facilitate.
It requires stepping back.
Yes. The goal is creating an environment of discovery. It is about providing the space and the autonomy for kids to discover the specific activities that inspire them to practice entirely on their own.
It is the difference between lighting a campfire and holding a blowtorch to a log.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, if you build the foundation right and spark intrinsic motivation, the fire sustains itself and grows naturally. You just have to occasionally throw a log on it.
Just feed it a little bit.
Right. But the early specialization approach is taking a blowtorch to the wood. It looks incredibly intense and bright right away, but it eventually scorches everything and runs out of fuel.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the long-term impacts on a human being's development are staggering.
Staggering.
A self-directed learner who has been allowed to cultivate their own curiosity will outpace the forced prodigy almost every single time over a 20-year horizon.
Almost every time.
Because the individual who feels pressured to practice something they do not enjoy will inevitably hit a developmental wall. The pressure literally hinders their neurological ability to absorb complex, creative problem-solving skills over the long haul.
This connects perfectly to the framework introduced in the source material from ACTIQO. For you listening, I want to make sure you have the pronunciation right. It's pronounced ACTIQO.
ACTIQO, right.
You can explore their philosophy deeply at gtactico.com. ACTIQO is designed specifically as an audit tool to help families step back from the frenzy of the modern scheduling race.
To pause and evaluate.
Exactly. It helps them make clearer, data-driven decisions about how children are actually spending their time.
The brilliance of the ACTIQO approach is that it forces that pause. Instead of blindly signing a child up for the next elite travel team simply because it is the next logical step on the treadmill, the framework asks families to observe and measure specific signals.
It breaks down the evaluation of activities into 5 distinct categories, right?
Yes. Time investment, cost, energy, enjoyment, and the overall experience.
Now, measuring time and cost is easy. We all do that instinctively. We say, this robotics camp takes up 4 hours on Saturday and costs $300.
Right. The quantitative stuff is simple.
But the real breakthrough in this framework is the qualitative tracking of energy and enjoyment. We rarely stop to measure the emotional and physical toll an activity takes. How does ACTIQO actually guide families to measure something as subjective as energy?
The sources outline a very practical method for this. It's often referred to as the car ride home test.
The car ride home test.
Yeah. It requires the parent to act as a silent observer. When you pick your child up from an activity, what is their baseline state? Are they buzzing with a frantic, anxious energy?
Or are they completely silent and emotionally depleted?
Exactly. Or on the flip side, are they engaged, talking about what they learned, maybe physically exhausted but standing a little taller?
Because there is a massive distinction between good tired and bad tired.
A huge distinction.
Good tired is the physical exhaustion that comes from deep engagement. Bad tired is dread. It is the emotional depletion of masking your true feelings for 2 hours while a coach yells at you.
Right. And you can have two activities that take the exact same amount of time and cost the exact same amount of money, but yield entirely different energetic returns.
Just construct a scenario based on the ACTIQO audit. Imagine a family comparing a high-cost, high-intensity travel soccer team with a low-cost, low-intensity local theater group.
Okay, classic comparison.
The soccer team might check all the cultural boxes for prestige and future scholarships.
It looks great on paper.
But when the family actually tracks the signals, they realize the soccer team drains the child's energy to 0. It causes pre-practice anxiety and post-practice exhaustion.
Bad tired.
Exactly. The theater group, however, returns high enjoyment and actually gives the child a surplus of energy that spills over into their homework and family interactions.
And when families use a framework to actually read those specific signals, they can make fundamentally better choices.
You really can.
They can look at the overbooked calendar and confidently say, this high-intensity elite program is actively harming our child's well-being and killing their love for the sport.
Is not serving them.
No, even if it theoretically counts towards some arbitrary quota of 10,000 hours.
The data and the psychology of motivation unequivocally reject the idea that the winner in life is simply the person who started grinding out practice hours at age 3.
Unequivocally. Synthesizing the core message from all these sources, the ultimate insight is incredibly liberating for anyone tasked with guiding a young person.
It completely takes the pressure off. You do not have to have a 10-year master plan for your kindergartner.
You don't.
You don't have to mortgage your house to pay for elite coaching at age 8 just to keep them from falling behind.
It gives the childhood back to the child, and it gives the parents their sanity back.
Yes.
Success is about finding the activities that inspire long-term commitment. By intentionally trying a wide array of different activities without the pressure of immediate mastery, children discover where their authentic interests lie.
When the hours take care of themselves, when the passion is driving the vehicle.
They absolutely do.
Let's summarize the key takeaways we've discovered today for you. True mastery. The kind of greatness that actually moves the needle in any field cannot be forced through a brute force quota of hours.
You cannot spreadsheet your way to genius?
Mastery requires the freedom to explore broadly. It requires the immense patience to let a person build a diverse, seemingly disconnected foundation of skills. And above all else, it requires the spark of genuine, intrinsic motivation.
Practice without purpose is just a chore.
Practice fueled by curiosity is the real, sustainable path to mastery.
This raises an important question, one that pushes us just a bit beyond the realm of parenting and childhood development.
Oh, where we're going with this?
Well, we have spent this entire deep dive unpacking how forced early specialization, external pressure, and the mindless accumulation of hours ultimately hinder mastery and destroy joy in children. But how might this exact same dynamic apply to us as adults?
Oh, wow. If you look at adult burnout rates, the parallels are terrifyingly obvious. We subject ourselves to the exact same flawed 10,000-hour logic in our professional lives.
We really do. Think about your own daily routine. If you are grinding away at 10,000 hours in a career path, a side hustle, or an adult pursuit that drains your energy to zero rather than bringing you a sense of engagement,
Are you actually on the path to mastery?
or are you just stuck in the adult version of the miserable, high-pressure travel soccer team?
Wow.
If you are just putting in the hours because society or your LinkedIn feed makes you feel like you have to, are you simply filling space on your calendar to avoid the anxiety of falling behind?
That is a deeply provocative thought to leave you with. We demand a sampling period and exploration for our kids so they can find their passion, but we routinely deny ourselves that exact same grace.
We lock ourselves in.
We lock ourselves into early professional specialization and refuse to pivot because we don't want to lose the hours we've already invested.
The sunk cost fallacy.
Exactly. Maybe it is time we all stopped obsessively counting the hours and started paying very close attention to the energetic signals we are receiving. Allow yourself the freedom to explore again. Find the thing that sparks your curiosity so the effort actually feels meaningful.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today. Keep questioning the unquestionable rules of success, keep exploring your own curiosity, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.